Hi guys, welcome to Love and Lust Audiobooks channel, updated daily with great audiobooks. So please subscribe to me if you don't want to miss it. Well, let's go to read this book, Stolen by the Rival Alpha, Part 4, Chapter 31 to 40. Chapter 31, when you're with your mate, Gemma. I hadn't had the mindset to consider what was next for either Raisa. All we had been focused on was escaping Connor and not whatever was beyond that. I didn't know about her, but I did not excel at planning ahead in anything I did. And now I realized the hard way that would be my downfall. As I lay in bed, all I could come up with were two options: leave or stay. Leave to get on a boat and a train back to Lyrehaven and somehow get a ride back to Opal Springs, where my family would be waiting. I could go back to Lynn and hug her until my arms hurt. I could hug my parents and weep as I told them I was sorry, and all I wanted to do was make things better for the Brooks family. I could take that teaching job and hope everything returned to normal and put my journey to the West behind me and never look back. Or I could stay. I could talk to Jera and Jaichi and wonder if they wanted me to join Moonwake just as they wanted Reza to. Did they even want an Easterner and outcast, just an ordinary she-wolf who failed Epsilon training and naively thought coming to a war-ravaged country would be fun? Even if they accepted me, what could I offer? What skills did I have that could contribute? The answer was none. And it made me realize that I had wasted most of my life doing nothing. That didn't sit too well in the dead of night, so mindful of a fast-asleep Raisa in the bed over, I slipped out of the room. I had no idea where I was going in the maze of a building, but wherever I could forget about my intrusive thoughts seemed pretty good. I didn't realize I found the balcony until I nearly bumped into someone else trying to escape the reality of things. Oh, sorry, I mumbled, starting to turn away. That someone else snatched my wrist and pulled me out onto the balcony, spinning me around, so I bumped into them chest to chest. "Where do you think you're going?" asked a low, husky voice that rumbled through me and sent a million goosebumps up my skin. I looked up to meet Kael's dark gray eyes reflecting the light of the near full moon. I forgot how to speak for a moment, but when I did, they came out as a rasp, not back to my room. His hands were already skating down to my backside, and I didn't mind in the slightest. I wanted it. It wasn't an innocent or typical gesture of comfort, but it was the only thing keeping me up when my legs felt weak and ready to give out. Can't sleep. Remember that existential dread you keep trying to fight against? Of course. Well, it's coming for me now. Carol's hair was in disarray, pieces sticking up at odd angles, and it made me want to reach up on my toes to smooth it down so he didn't look so goofy for a moment like this that felt suddenly precious and intimate. He seemed to notice my attention cut to it, and he smoothed it out of his eyes and back. Better. For now, I laughed softly. Now I could see his eyebrows, which furrowed with deep worry. What happened? I swallowed back threatening tears. I realized that I've done nothing productive in my entire life. "That doesn't seem right," he said with attempted humor. "It is the way I see it. I came here because I thought it would be an adventure away from a plain, boring life." It sounds so naive and ridiculous, but I figured I would just settle into a new life where the only thing I would have to worry about was the learning curve of being a breeder. "You thought coming to the West would be fun." I smacked away his arms off my butt. "Don't mock me." Kael cocked his head, his stupid smirk making a return. "I would never. Keep making me annoyed, and I'll never let you touch my ass again," I threatened with a forefinger to his face. He snapped his teeth teasingly at it. "I've come to like it. You know, there's your incentive to not be a D cheesecake," I scowled. retracting my hand. Fondling, I was fine with. Nipping fingers, I was not. Just hear me out. His smile faded, and he nodded seriously, and I let his hands rest on my hips. I sighed. I don't think ahead. I just let what happens happen and dealt with the consequences. But in my tiny, boring seaside village, there weren't any. You would think being the alpha's niece would bear some kind of importance. Are part of a dynasty, Kael interrupted with wide eyes. I nodded, surprised that it meant anything. You don't know much about me. I would like to. Really? Really? My short laugh was breathless. My parents are Lana and Galaran, and I have two uncles on my dad's side, Hafalok, who's the beta, and Barun, who's the alpha of our pack. Ifin sighed. Hafalok sold his daughter, my cousin Lynn, as a breeder to Connor, but she's only 16, so I took her place without telling anyone because I was so desperate to save her and get the hell out of Opal Springs. I was horrified that a father could sell his own daughter for something. I still don't know why, but Connor said things. He said them to taunt me, and he alluded that he would actually tell me. I inhaled deeply. On the exhale, I said that paper Bryn handed me. It's a record of whatever deal Connor and Havlok made. Kael's lip curled, a dangerous light sparking in his eyes. Disgusting bastard. I agree. So what did they agree to at the cost of an adolescent's life? I bit my cheek so hard, it hurt. I don't know. It's under my pillow before he could make fun of me again or ask why. I said, I'm too afraid to. I'm worried that it means Havlo agreed to aid Hazel Coast to swear loyalty by marrying two households, but it doesn't make any sense since Baran supports Sunmount. Kael gently put his finger to my lips to silence my rambling. I fell silent, but the pad of his thumb found my lower lip and pulled down ever so slightly to part my mouth open. You don't need to be afraid of what's past and gone, Gemma, he said softly. Not while you're with me. Kael, I breathed as he started to bend forward. My hands instinctively went to his chest, reaching onto my toes to meet him halfway, feeling perfectly right in his embrace. Kael, I don't know if you want to kiss me. I want to kiss you, I said quickly, but after, I don't know what to do, where to go. He paused, my eyes fluttered open, his expression was pained. You should go home, Gemma. What? Kael rested his forehead to mine, gripping my arms to hold me in place so I couldn't pull away to stare at him in disbelief. You don't belong here, Gemma, nah. You deserve to be in a place where you're safe and not surrounded by ward. Well, what if I wanted to stay? Kael pushed me at arm's length at my outburst. His expression went from pain to defensive. You're not safe here. That made me angry. You just said I was safe with you. You hypocrites. Yes, but you're safer. No, I snapped. No, am I really safe in a place where my own family sells their pups? Regardless, I'm useless there. I have no future there. What? And you can have one here. Yes, I screamed. What if I'm meant to be here? What if I can make my stupid decision actually mean something? And why did we both feel a ribbon in that ugly throne room? Oh, we saved each other from death, Kael, and you expect me to just say thanks and move on. Why do you not want me? My heart lurched. I clapped a hand over my mouth as Kael's brows rose in surprise. But before he could say anything, I forged ahead. I want to know what Diana said was true. What's true? If someone at your side was the last thing you could ever want. Kael looked skyward and swore, Goddess, damn it, Gemma, that as well. Is she right? I demanded. His voice was equally sharp. What do you want me to say? That I want to keep you in constant danger. Despite my protection, at the same time, I'm trying to protect my entire pack. My crown is heavy, Gemma, and I can't risk it falling off, especially if you're close enough that it falls on your feet. I was grinding my teeth. I was fighting back rebellion, wanting to keep getting a rise out of him, and me too. I just wanted to be combative, because when you were both angry, That's when truth came out. It won't fall if I help carry it. I yelled. No, you don't deserve to bear that weight. I won't have you abandoning your old life. You don't control what I can and can't do. I've already left behind my old life. I can't just go back and pretend none of this has happened. Kael was towering over me, and his anger was palpable, at odds with the beautiful, cool night. But I wasn't afraid. You have your parents, Gemma aunts, and uncles and cousins. Why would you not want to return to a family? I felt a prick of guilt. He lost his parents and 5 of his siblings. I love them, and I hope they love me back, Kael, I said, trying to keep my voice hard even as it lost its volume. But I don't belong there anymore. But you're better off. The guilt vanished, and I raised my voice again. Why are you trying to push me away? You stupid idiot. This stupid idiot doesn't want you to die. There we go already. The same argument. Just say what you really want to say. Fine, Kael exploded, throwing up his hands. Fine, you want the truth. The truth is that I want you to stay. If you think your place is here, then I want you to find meaning. I want to take down Connor together and return to Moonwake, where you can be my... It was his turn to cut himself short. Kael turned, putting his back to me for what seemed like forever. Neither of us spoke as we absorbed the implications of his outburst. The peace of night seemed so fragile, and I was afraid to disrupt it, as if we hadn't already. I had to be brave. When I was in the throne room, I said softly, hoping that he would turn around, and I felt the ribbon connecting me to you. There was a word that came to mind, but it was just out of reach. Or maybe I just didn't want to accept it. I was too afraid to... Kael paused, and then he tipped his head to the side so I could see his profile. He swallowed hard. Me too. It just wasn't the right time. I took a tentative step toward him. Is now the right time? His mouth quirked. Do you want it to be? Do you want it to be? I mocked without venom, wrinkling my nose at him. Kael's eyes roved my face, but it didn't feel as innocent as that. It was more like he was deciding if he wanted to devour me. The thought made me feel very warm in a certain place. A breath shuddered out of me, and I took another step toward him. I don't think there ever will be, in the middle of a war, a pause. You can grab my ass now. He purred, pulling me against him. I looked up at him. His eyes softened immediately, lips parting in awe. When you're with your mate, it doesn't really matter. Chapter 32. Kiss me already. Gemma. Mates, Kael, Liviana, the alpha of the once mighty Moonwake pack, once the most powerful force in the West, a cory, an obnoxious, sweet, brave idiot was my soulbound mate. I never thought I would ever find my soul's other half, much less believe I ever could. I was just a she-wolf who failed Epsilon training and spent her days without thought to any kind of productive future. But if we were mates, it meant we were worthy of each other, regardless of, well, anything. The ribbon that we both felt, it was the mate bond that somehow felt visceral. I gave into my instincts and let the fire in my core flare, the muscles there tightening, desire running through my veins like adrenaline. And suddenly I knew that nothing in the world was more important than the male in front of me. The night was cool, the moon goddess blessing us with her light above, limning Kael in hazy white, making him breathlessly beautiful. I didn't know if I wanted him to kiss me tenderly or have him devour me, but I was getting ahead of myself. Let's start with kissing, I said out loud, and then flushed at that fact. Kael's laugh was low and rough. You're so easily embarrassed. You know that. I shoved his chest lightly. No need to point it out, idiot. Call me whatever you like. I'm still gonna kiss you. It's our last chance. My body and soul quivered.
Okay, I rest.
Kael took my face between my hands with as much care as an heirloom, his fingernails lightly scraping my scalp. I shuddered as a million bumps formed on my skin in an instant. He tilted my face up, tipping his down, and he was staring at my mouth while I was fascinated with the awe in his eyes, awe at me as if I was just as important to him as he was to me. I started to close mine, our lips inches away. Quick as a snake, his hands left my face and grabbed my backside, hoisting me up. Like a Nedra, my arms wrapped around his neck and my legs locked around his hips. I stifled a laugh into his shoulder, feeling giddy enough that I feared I would ruin the moment. But Kael laughed too. Our bodies vibrated on the same wavelength. He carried me inside and set me on a vanity that matched our eye levels. I drew back to meet his gaze, refusing to let him go. Moonlight bathed the room as brighter and smoother than any gas lamp. I could see my mate with perfect clarity. We were already panting with want, both of us torn between looking in our eyes or mouths, but it was me who got impatient. "Kiss me already, Kael," I gasped. I wanted it to be deep and slow, and I knew that he did too. But my demand made him jerk forward and smash his lips to mine with an elicited moans of surprise from us both. I hadn't kissed anyone since my fling. I figured I'd forgotten how to do it, but I definitely didn't. And Kael definitely knew what he was doing. We made it soft and sweet, and his lips tasted like cinnamon and sweet wine, and I felt my breath leaving me, a sensation I felt even more when his hand slipped under my shirt. His rough fingertips skated up and down my spine in a kind of massage, teasing me, the hair at the back of my neck standing on end. I mumbled wordlessly, taking revenge by sliding my fingers up his skin from the nape of his neck to tangle in his hair. He growled, hands going to my hips, then my thighs gripping the undersides so his fingers could press into the inner flesh, just inches from the tender spot between my legs. My core tightened further, and I whimpered into his mouth, "Kael." Kael moved to my throat, his kisses feather-light, now pushing my knees away, spreading my legs. At her quick, his fingers slipped under the waistband of my pants. But I had a different order in mind. "Wait," I gasped, and then didn't as I fisted his shirt hem in my hands and pulled it up over his head and tossed it aside, leaning back to admire him. This time, I didn't have to be ashamed of my gawking. "Finally like what you see," Kael asked, flexing. "Oh, I never disliked anything." "Good," he said roughly. "Now, if you don't mind." Not at all. My voice rasped when he mirrored the action. I didn't wear a bra to sleep, and bless the moon goddess that I didn't, because there was no barrier between my shirt and skin, my breasts bouncing into place when my arms returned to my side. Kael's eyes lit up, and I felt smug at his own gawking. Perfect. He croaked. I grabbed his wrists, touched them. He went beyond that. Dropping to his knees, he cupped one with a hand while his mouth compassed the other. A gasp dragged out of my throat. Pleasure crackled through me like lightning. Kael's tongue flicked my nipple as he open-mouthed kissed it, his thumb doing the same thing. The simultaneous actions were overriding my senses, and I felt something I hadn't before, at least not in this magnitude. I did wear underwear, but I wouldn't be able to wear it after this. I grabbed a fistful of Kael's hair and shuddered another gasp. "Oh my God!" Kael retracted with a jerk and a sharp inhale. His voice was a husky purr. "Already, dear. I've barely done anything. You're just that good. I can be better." "Show me then." "Patience, Gemma, patience." He was exhibiting excellent control for a male. His mouth returned to my peaked breast, but this time he used his teeth and pulled ever so slightly. What a tease. I yanked his hair. Kael hummed in amusement, understanding the wordless command, "Do not play." His lips drifted to the underside of my heavy breast, his breath warm and soft. He started a path of teeth-tipped kisses to my sternum, making a quick stop at the other breast before skimming up my chest, and then skipped to my lip. I squeaked and stared at him. when he pulled away with a wet smack. So I remember what your lips taste like before I taste your arousal. His smirk broadened, red as a date. I told you I like a good, ripe date. You did go try, I said breathlessly. Hurry. Why are you in such a rush? Gemma Kael purred, picking up yet another kiss trail. How are you less patient than me? A big, strong alpha. Fatkaki. That's the plan. Gritting my teeth in frustration, I shoved him away, and he gave way. I'd never be able to do so otherwise, and slipped out of his grasp to start to wriggle out of my pants. My inner thighs damp with my arousal. Disgust briefly disrupted my desperation. Kael's growl of hunger made my movements stutter, but then he hoisted me back up, carrying me across the hall into an empty room, and promptly threw me on the bed that was against the wall onto my back, knocking the breath out of my lung. Roughly, he spread my legs to stand between them, looming over me. That's my job, he growled. I bared my teeth, then do it faster. He took that to heart. Before, he had been slow and caring. Now, he seemed to have absorbed my desperation, because when I lifted my hips, he pulled off my loose cotton pants and underwear with frightening skill. Tossing them aside, he dropped to his knees, grabbed my hips, and yanked me forward until I was just inches from his face. He set the backs of my knee on his shoulders, palms firm on my hip bones, as if I would try to escape. I most definitely was not. Though my limbs felt weak, I lifted myself onto my elbows to watch Kael as he suddenly slowed to a stop. His eyes were closed and rested his cheek to my inner thigh. Kael, I murmured. He pressed a gentle kiss to my thigh mere inches away from my center. Is it too soon to say? Yes, I said more sharply than intended, knowing exactly what he was gonna say. I sighed, not just yet. Kael, his eyes fluttered open, finding mine as easy as breathing. As you wish, Gemma. Then I watched his expression change like a chameleon's skin, pensive and gentle to something crooked and wolfish. Not breaking our gaze, he dragged his tongue up my thigh, sweeping up my wetness in a long, deliberate stroke. I wanted to implode. I forced my elbows to keep me propped up to watch and lick and kiss me, like we had all the time in the world. When the tip of his tongue reached the tip of my center, I whimpered a plea. I had only been tasted once and was impartial to it, but now it was a drug I craved. With one confident stroke, Kael's tongue swept inside me. I thought I would die from bliss. My fingers curled in the sheets of the bed, desperate to keep watching him so close to the most vulnerable part of my body. After a few more strokes, I couldn't take it anymore. Frail, I gasped. Kael, I want something else in me right now. Please. Kael lifted his head and his eyes were glazed with desire, but his voice was still seductive when he purred. I did not peg you as a female who would beg for what she wants. I hauled myself up and grabbed a fistful of his hair and glared at him. Then I will demand. His look was predatory. Now that is attractive. He got to his feet, slipping his thumbs under the waistband of his pants, tugging them down. Only an inch. When I snarled impatiently, his grin was self-satisfied, knowing how much I wanted him. Do you want me or you to... The veiny V between his hip bones was just a foot away. I needed what was just below the hardness bulging just beneath his pants. I reached forward, but Kael took a smooth step back and dropped them himself. Then Kael, my mate, my mate, my mate, my mate, my mind chanted, gleeful and proud and lustful, was standing in front of me in his full glory. I had only seen one seat check, but I knew certain qualifications. His checked the boxes. Deliberately, slowly, Kael leaned down until his hands were braced on either side of my head. I finally collapsed onto my back and stared up at him, holding my breath as his length twitched at my core. I opened my mouth to tell him to hurry up, but he silenced me with a deep, lingering kiss. Only when my hands slid up his back Did he get the message? Roll with me, Gemma murmured. A memory pulsed behind my eyes, Connor towering over me, kissing my skin with only nefarious intent, and I recalled my frantic fear and the will to defend myself. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I wouldn't be haunted by what almost happened, what he almost did to me. I banished it forever. He lined himself up at my entrance and carefully pushed inside of me. I felt my body stretching to accommodate him as a tingling, warm sensation took over my lower body. Kael started to slowly thrust his hips, adjusting, and it was effortless to match him. And soon he was completely inside of me. I inhaled sharply and my fingers curved with sudden reflex, digging my nails into his flesh. He winced, but didn't falter, unable to form a full sentence. All he could manage was, "Okay." "Yes," I said fervently, lifting my hips up as he steadily worked his way further inside me. I was so deprived that I was already barreling toward euphoria faster. "Say please." "Please," I groaned, closing my eyes and tipping my head back, not holding back my pleasured noises as Kael obeyed, his own noises making me crazy. "I take it," he panted, "that you are not a virgin." Don't you think it's a little late to ask? Neither are you, as frazzled as my mind was right now? I tried to put pieces together. It was true, but I was inexperienced, and it had been a while. There aren't many female. Just 2. They sufficed, but I don't want to think about them. I only want you. Kael lowered himself on top of me, his lips finding my neck, scraping his teeth on my shoulder. I shuddered. But this time, it was only half out of pleasure. We were new mates, lost in the frenzy of consummating the mutual recognition of the bond. He was the male drawn to the neck and shoulder, a possessive alpha scraping his teeth there. I swerved the upper half of my body away from him. Kael drew back to meet my eyes and didn't hesitate. "You don't want to mark each other." "It's not that I'm afraid of commitment," I rambled. "It's just too soon." He nodded. "As you wish, mate." We both smiled at that word. "Mate," I said softly and then cried out in perfect bliss when I barreled over the edge. Chapter 33. Betrayal. Gemma. Kael roared my name, and I didn't give a single shit if the rest of the Moonwake pack heard. All that mattered was that the ribbon united our souls and hearts, accepting it with our entire selves. All that mattered was my unyielding joy in knowing he was mine and I was his forever. From that first day of meeting, both of us drenched in blood and fueled by terror, my immediate disdain for his flippancy about our life and death situation slowly evolving to find it. Looking at the progression in hindsight, it was a fast change over the course of only a few days. But what did days mean compared to the minutes and hours of each other's company? What did minutes and hours mean when it was the words said and the actions performed that brought us together, like the goddess's invisible hands pushing us closer? Even if it felt like it was against our wills. After pulling out lingeringly, Kael wrapped his arms around me and rolled onto his back. Drawing me with him, I rested my cheek on his chest, him tucking my head under his chin. Our legs tangled together, his fingers stroked my hair, his rapid breathing slowly calming into a steady rhythm. I wanted to melt into his soft gestures, to close my eyes and drift into sleep. But my want to take him in, actually take in every slope of his body's features, to trace my fingertips over every curve of muscle. Every faint scar was stronger. I wanted to kiss him the way he kissed me, both tender and hungry, to make us into the equals that we were destined to be. I started with drawing idle shapes on his chest, sending a shiver through him at the soft touch. I smiled and waited for a returning touch. His fingernails skimmed down the center of my spine. My whimper was shielded behind my lip. I craned my neck to kiss the underside of his jaw like a mischievous pup. He stuck his tongue out to lick the tip of his nose. My idle circles turned into a stab. "I'm trying to be romantic." Kael's low laugh rumbled through my bones. That's the first thing you say after making love for the first time. What am I supposed to say? I asked, genuinely not knowing, pulling myself up to look at him. His lips parted again in awe. You are so beautiful, Gemma. My smile was tender and I touched the tip of my nose to his innocent retaliation. He leaned up to surprise kiss me. I want to explore every inch of your body. I want to kiss and lick and bite you, whisper kind and dirty things in your ear. I want to make love and I want to fuck you so you scream my name loud enough for Herrick to hear and know he is inferior. I silenced him with another kiss. As you wish, my mate, I murmured. But for now, let's just sleep. I jerked awake when Kael did. What is it? I asked groggily. His arms were still around me, our legs still tangled. Never mind. Go back to sleep. No, but his serious tone was a bucket of cold water over my head. I was fully awake. I strained my ears to hear what he was picking up as I registered sunlight streaming through the balcony doors instead of moonlight, and it didn't take long. Panic. Goddess, what? But that wasn't important right now. I struggled to get back into my clothes thanks to the rips Kael had created. I thought he would make a joke, but I could feel fear radiating off his skin. Such intense worry that it scared me. The second I stumbled into my shoes, Kael grabbed my arm and dragged me out into the hallway. The shouting was louder. There was no one to the left, but when we turned right, there was frantic movement between the doors of the apartments, as if the Moonwake shifters were hastily packing their thing. Dread sluiced through me when I heard someone yell, "We can't carry that." Leave it. Kael's voice cracked when he swore under his breath. His hand slipped into mine. Come on. What's going on? I gasped as I tried to keep up with his pace. We've been compromised. Gemma, my heart leaped in relief and fear at Race's voice. She was running toward us, still wearing nightwear, her hand protectively over her belly. Race, I breathed, hugging her. What's going on? She barely hugged me back, and it was her way of saying that there was no time for any sort of relief. Rian has disappeared. Diana called their relationship off. I gasped and stared at her. I forgot he wanted to talk yesterday, but he left me. I did, she interrupted, and even in a time like this, her grace was enviable. Raisa had the makings of a leader, I realized. She was so calm, so intelligent, and despite her words, she inspired me to remain just as calm. The breakup wasn't why he left. She looked at Kael, at my mate, and said he betrayed you. Kael. It was the first time she'd said his name, if nothing else. That sent another shot of fear through me. There were a lot of firsts in these past 2 minutes. The next first was Kael's lack of joke or expression. He was just mute and blank, like he had no idea how to react to his own brother, turning his back on his own pack. And yet Raisa still found time to show her own smirk and say, finally. I would have flushed if Kael didn't jerk into a run, still holding on to me. Rita and her long legs had no trouble keeping up, and we ran through the building. I didn't know who Kael was searching for. When he ran past the theater, he skidded to a halt, and I slammed face first into his back. Jara, Jake, she panted when they stopped their shouting orders to get to the next safe house. Where the hell have you been? Jake barked. Little Tara was in her father's arms, wide-eyed and confused at the commotion. When she saw Kael, she broke into a smile with a few missing teeth. Camille, she giggled, grasping her hands toward him. I released Kael's hand so he could scoop her into his arms and hug her as if his life depended on it. Tara, I'm here, over her shoulder, he demanded. What the hell is going on? Jake's words made my heart stop. Hazel and Son are sweeping the street. Kael swore again at the same time. Yes, and it's safe to say that they're after you three, Jara said, darkly looking between his alpha, me, and Raisa. And Rian, I know deception, and it is evident that he gave up the location in exchange for something. Raisa said, I made a deal with him. Ryan had said, at Diana's apartment. Kael shook his head, giving Tara back to Jera. No, Rian would never do that. He would never betray his pack or his family. Not all family members value loyalty, Raisa says flatly. Kael looked at her, and I swear electricity cracked between their gazes. A sudden battle of will. Kael didn't know anything about Raisa. He couldn't understand the depth of that sentence. He finally realized that fine, so you think he's behind this? Yes, and if Hazel is here, Raisa hesitated, her confidence wavering even though her jaw was still set resolutely. Then Connor might be too. She looked at me for a dormant emotions riled up in me, and I hated Connor with refreshed rage. I hated myself a little too. We had escaped something no one had managed before, and it was like a slap to his face. He was too proud and insulted to let it go, and it was my fault. I brought him and his army here. I squared my shoulders and looked between Jera and J.K. What do we do? They took me in for the first time, then at Kael, then between us. I saw the pieces click together in their eyes. J.K. opened her mouth, but Raisa interrupted. We don't have time for gawking at new mates. What is Moonwake's next escape plan? My face flushed next to me. Kael looked like a pup who was trying not to be scolded. Thankfully, the siblings snapped into leader mode. We go to Nedra. There are more entrances. We split up into designated groups. You three take Diana with you, and we'll meet you there, Kael. You know which one. What about Rian? They hesitated, and I could understand why Rian was Kael's little brother, his only blood-related family besides Tara, and he was Moonwake's heir. From what I gathered, it was Jera and JT's honor-bound responsibility to keep the Liviana line alive and safe. But at the moment, they had no idea where he was or whose side he was on now any more than the rest of us did. He's on his own, JT finally said roughly, but if you see him, knock him out. We can't let him give up our locations, especially Nedra, if he hasn't already. He's my brother, and he can risk every life in this building. Jera snapped, and I could hear and sense how much of a toll this was taking on all of them. They all loved him and didn't want to accept the fact that he might be working for the enemy. Now, the life of one may not be worth the many, but you he stabbed Kael in the chest with a finger are the last chance we have to get back home. Back to Moonwake. You need to fucking live. Your new mate is all the more reason to. They all looked at me, and I suddenly felt the weight of Kael's crown, but I wouldn't let it fall, not off his head and not onto my feet. I lifted my chin. I will protect him. The siblings' smiles were relieved but fleeting. Let's go. Jera ordered, if you see Herrick or Morven, do not engage. Do everything you can to avoid them. Goddess forbid they're actually here. The possibility was terrifying. I grabbed Raisa's hand as we followed Jera and JT through the halls, continuing to make sure everyone was on the same page for the escape, until we came to a door hidden behind a staircase. I heard sniffling, but Chi beat me to the question, Diana. She seemed to materialize from her hiding space. She'd been crying when she spoke. Her voice was strained. I'd always hoped he was my mate. He's not. One of Cyrus's breeders at Chapter 34. Gemma. My heart that was full to bursting only minutes ago now broke for Diana. She loved Rian more than I could know, but to him had it been a complete farce? Or did he love her up until he felt the mate bond with someone unattainable? He had called her his love, his son. Is that a lie? Was that him pretending she was the Sun Mountain breeder? It made me angry and sick. The Moonwake shifters were equal parts devastated and furious by Rian's goddess. Blessed Betrayal shocked into silence. I pulled Diana into a fierce hug. You deserve better. She hugged me back, and her voice hardened. You bet your ass I do. I admired her shift from despair to take no shit fury, though. I did worry that it would lead her to do something rash. When I pulled away and Diana pressed her ear to the door, Kael grabbed my hand and murmured, "Don't let me do anything stupid." He was a completely different Kael than had made love to me. Now he was serious and deadly focused. His perchance for jokes was currently non-existent. I nodded, knowing he meant keeping him from going after Rian or trying to appeal to his better nature. "All right, enough lingering," Jera said. "We all need to get going." Gemma. I turned at Jeichi's voice. Her dark blue eyes bore into my soul when she said, "Protect him. If he doesn't return by the end of today, I will find you and make your life a living hell." Jaxie, Kael, and Jara barked. She didn't budge. "I protect this family. I protect this pack. They are doors and you stand, Gemma Brooks, on the threshold of both. If you expect us to accept you, then you have to prove you are worthy of our trust." 6 pairs of eyes watched and wait for my response. 6 pairs of ears hearing my heart pound. And I gathered my courage. It wasn't hard because Kael's now my everything. I was his everything. That meant everything and everyone I loved. He would protect and I would protect everything and everyone he cared about, at the risk of my own life. My family was back in Opal Springs, probably wondering if I was dead or alive, living their simple lives, enjoying the sun and the sea where I knew they were safe. I would hopefully live a life long enough that I could one day return to them. But for right now, my mate needed me, and that was reason enough to stay. That and revenge on Connor Herrick. I met Jeichi's gaze unflinchingly. "I promise on my life that I will bring my alpha home." She searched my face for what seemed like minutes, but then she swallowed hard and nodded, and I knew she knew my truthful ferocity. She knew my determination. I turned to Giraffe, who seemed torn between surprise and gratitude. "I will bring him back." He nodded. "Once the strength of a mate is greater than any army. Now go, all of you." Kael hugged his siblings and kissed Tara's cheek. "I'll see you soon, little niece to me, Diana and Raisa," he said. "Keep close and do not let each other go." We all linked hands as Jara, Tara, and Jeichi rushed to where they were supposed to go. There was a brief still silence that felt tangible with fear of the unknown, but we couldn't afford lingering either. Kael pressed his ear to the door. We heard the chaos on the street, shouting, screaming, and the pounding of heavy footfalls on the packed dirt road. And then it started to fade. I wasn't sure where we were going, but I trusted Kael to get us there. Once he deemed it safe as it could be, at least he cracked the door open and started to peer out. Just as quickly, he swore and slammed it shut, or tried to. A foot stopped it, and a voice chuckled, "Don't shut me out, Kara." Rian's voice sent a trill of fear and disgust down my spine. It was sly, sickly sweet, reminding me of Connor's. I knew in those 5 words, the Moonwake prince could not be trusted. I feared he would try to shove himself in, or Kael would fight him off, but they both didn't move. Instead, they spoke through the crack between the door. "I never thought you would betray your own family," Kael said darkly. "My own brother." Rian ignored him. "Get out of there or we will take you by force." I never thought I would have to knock my older brother unconscious, but here we are, waiting for that opportunity. I don't take orders from traitors," said Kael coldly. "You do if you want to keep those females behind you." Kael looked at us over his shoulder. All 3 of us shook our heads. "What do you want, Rian?" I grabbed Kael's sleeve before he could lurch forward. "Trial?" "No." Rian laughed this time, echoed by a few others. "The son," Diana breathed. She is my mate, Kael growled. Don't you dare talk to her that way. Mates Rian scoffed. They're just a cruel joke that tears families apart. Look at Jera. You lost a lover. You lost your mate, Rose, he said, raising his voice so Reza heard. Look at you and Gemma. It's not going to be long before you're torn away from each other. You bastard, Reza hissed. Why, Carol barked. Why are you doing this? What deal did you make? Tell the whole truth. Ryan ignored him again. What brings us together is the same thing that brings us apart. Come with me, Kael, so I can save my mate. Are you serious? Yeah, Kael yelled. You legitimately think I was poisoned by a goddess? Damn, Spike. Cyrus promised to save my life if I married his daughter and combined our packs to join forces as allies against Hazel. I felt like I didn't have a choice. Neither of us expected one of his breeders to walk in and find out she was my mate. Cruel fate. But if I don't hand you over, brother, he gave me 2 options. 1, I fail, and he murders her. 2, you come with me, you marry his daughter to seal our deal, and I get to be with my mate. Neither of those outcomes benefit me. Ranning Carol's voice was hurt, and it made my heart ache at its sorrow. Our parents didn't raise you to be selfish. They barely raised me, Kael. Your benefit is Cyrus making Moonwake untouchable. We can help him kill Connor. And then he can get us back to Crescent. Why the hell would he help us in the first place? Hazel is our common enemy. Once we kill Connor and defeat his Epsilon, once they hightail it without their leader, both Sun Mountain and Moonwake can live in peace. He knows we're not a threat, and yet he wants to ally with us. Carol interrupted flatly. Somehow I sensed Rian shrug. I'm aware. I just don't care. I care, Rian. I'm the alpha. You can't make me choose any of those options for that reason alone. I don't care, Regan shouted abruptly. I don't give a f when my mate is at the mercy of Cyrus F. King Morven. Have you ever met him? He kills innocent wolves without batting an eye. Some say Connor is worse, lacking empathy to not earn any allies, but I beg to differ. Cyrus is the true monster, the tougher. And you think we should join his ranks? Yeah, Kael exclaimed in disbelief. I didn't say that. We would be fighting side by side because if we are in his favor, we have nothing to fear, nothing to lose, and only our home to gain. I knew what he was trying to say. Stay on Cyrus's good side or else face the consequences of a scorned alpha. Beside me, Diana scoffed. She raised her voice. What do you think he'll just let us live in peace after we help him? How does he expect us to help anyway? Shut up, Haley. She stiffened. I recognized that name, or at least its meaning. Sun. But didn't she say she was from the East? Explain, Reza hissed. Diana whirled. I'm from the Goldcrest Pack in the East. It's where we studied medicine, Gemma. I changed my name to avoid the same disgust and distrust. I believed her, but Reza narrowed her eyes. We don't have time for this shit. Diana Healy snapped. She was small enough to squeeze past Heel, and before he could stop her, she escaped right onto the street. I immediately lost sight of her. Rian, there are other ways to save your mate without damning everyone else you love. There was a slap and scream. Carol caught Diana as she stumbled back. I hurried to pull her safety. I glimpsed her face. It was red from where Rian hit her. Unexpected. Hate flared in my chest. I don't see any, Rian snarled, and I'm too far gone to look or wait. All we do is mope and wait to reclaim our home as if someone is going to do it for us. I'm tired of doing nothing. I am the last living heir, and it is my duty to my family name to bring us home, and now I don't care how we achieve it. This is taking too long, snapped one of the sun guards. Let's just kill them. You want to be alpha? Here is your chance. I don't want to be an alpha, you idiot, Rian growled. I want to live with my mate in my homeland. There's another door. I looked up at Carol's voice, but he was still looking out onto the street. When I say run, go left and run as fast as you can. I glanced at Reza and Diana. They didn't react. It's our mind link, Gemma. I inhaled sharply. Kael's voice was inside my head, like my own thoughts. I hear you because I thought for him. Good, now run. I grabbed Reza and Diana's hands and hissed, run. They didn't hesitate to follow. We scrambled back the way we came, veering left as Kael instructed. Behind us, Ryan yelled, "Hey, all of us!" After then, left, right, down, right as Kael shouted, "I'll hold them off." I repeated Kael's directions breathlessly, then tripped over a rip in the carpet as terror gripped me. "No, Kael, you can't." "What's wrong?" Reza demanded as we ran at full speed. I couldn't bring myself to say sacrifice. Diana swore that idiot Reza. "Gemma, you keep going." "I'll go help him." Before I could protest, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. We spun around. 5 Sun Mountain Epsilon were running toward us in their wolf form. We had a chance of outrunning them in our base forms. Not anymore. "Run!" I rasped. "Run!" I yelled, shoving Reza and Diana when they froze in horror. We took off into a sprint, reaching Kael's last direction, the closet in the amphitheater that led to the underground tunnel. 5 wolf bodies couldn't get down there. I wrenched the door open, Reza and Diana jumping into the darkness. I slammed the door shut just as one of the Epsilon rammed his shoulder into it with a snarl. I had no hope of trying to hold or bar the door. I threw myself after Reza and Diana, nearly flying down the stairs, not bothering to close the cellar door. The other females raced ahead of me blindly in the pitch dark, panting for breath, both hissing that this was too much running. Behind, the snarling turned back into yelling. Claws ravaging the carpet shifted into pounding footfalls. The Epsilon thundered down the steps and was catching up far too fast. "Don't run from us, pretty bitches," one of them crooned, indicating that at least he had shifted back into his base form. Cyrus wouldn't mind foreigners in his harem, especially whoever belonged to Connor. "No fishagging way and f-shaking hell," shouted, raised at the top of her lungs. "Here," Diana said, and I saw cracks of sunlight coming through the wood panels. She ran up and punched the correct one so it flew off and clattered a few feet away when we hauled ourselves out. "This way." She veered to the right and glanced over her shoulder to check that Reza and I were close behind. We faltered and I screamed, "Look out." "What?" "Oh, shit," Diana threw herself to the side of the road to avoid the massive car that was speeding straight toward her. It screeched to a halt just as the Sun Epsilon burst out from the cellar. I recognized the monster of machinery. It was one of Connor's cars. Reza and I both made to run in the opposite direction when a familiar voice called her name. We whirled, and she screamed. But it wasn't a scream of fear. It was an outcry of joy. Bryn was leaning out of the car window. Chapter 35, Sacrifice for My Mate. Gemma. Bryn flung open the car door and landed right as Reza threw herself at him in an embrace. He spun her around, both of them weeping. "Oh, my Wraith. I thought you were dead," she sobbed. "I thought..." "Lovely reunion," Diana shouted, "but we're a little busy." The Sun Mountain males wavered at the sight of the Hazel Coast Alpha's machinery. But once they realized a very non-threatening wolf jumped out and started hugging a helpless female, 3 of them shifted into their wolf forms and lunged forward. Bryn hoisted his mate into the passenger seat of the car, wrenching open the back door so Diana could dive into the back seat. I was 1 step behind, but then paused. "Carrie." Bryn shoved me inside and slammed the door. "He'll be fine," he yelled. "Just dread." Diana had already climbed into the driver's seat. "Where?" "What?" "West. Yeah, there's nothing for miles. Trust me with that." Bryn shifted into his wolf form and launched himself at the Sun Guard. Reza's scream threatened to shred my soul. Diana jerked the wheel and slammed on the gas, the car shuddering as it was forced around tightly. I grabbed Reza's shirt collar so she didn't fling herself out of the open window. "Reza, no, you have to..." "I just got him back. He's alive, and The car shot forward and we were swallowing ground at a speed that I knew would take us fast and far away. Far away from Kara. My throat closed. I just found you and I just lost you. How could I lose you so easily? Niebuhr was behind us, growing smaller with each second, and I scrambled for his presence in my mind through our soulmate link. But all I felt was the ribbon straining dangerously, growing taut, and the thought of it starting to fray was terrifying. Risa fell silent, and I knew that if I tried to speak, my voice would only be a croak. But Diana was apparently done feeling sorry. "This is effing wolf shit," she snarled, slamming her palm on the wheel. "Hazel territory in the north, sun somewhere, far in the east, the train station south, and in the western direction, not much, ruins of towns and lone houses. What does he expect us to find or who?" "Shut up," screeched Reza. "Just shut up. You rambling, lying bitch. How dare you drive away from my mate from Gemma's mate?" "Yeah, you didn't hesitate." "Exactly," she shouted back. "I didn't hesitate to follow your mate's order, to save your ungrateful ass. He said to trust him. I don't, but you do, I'm assuming. Are you questioning him?" Hey, I tried to mediate before Diana stopped the car to hash it out in the middle of the desert. That's where we were now, surrounded by miles of nothing but swirling sand. We can't turn on each other. Diana, you're right. Bryn wouldn't send us in a direction that didn't help us. Risa, the last thing I wanted to do was leave Kael. My last words to him were, "Carol, you can't, because I won't let those be the very last." Her voice had flattened. "We're going to save them." "Yes, I promised. But first, we have to find what Bryn wanted us to." And Diana said, "Call me Holy." Kael. Self-sacrifice was a part of being an alpha. It was loving your pack and your family so much that you would give up your own body to give them even the slightest chance to escape toward freedom. I never envisioned sacrificing myself to my own brother and telling my mate to flee without me. I just found you, my heart keened, the ribbon connecting me to Gemma twanging as she fled. How could I lose you so quickly? I wanted to tell her that I loved her, but she stopped me. I wanted to mark her, but she stopped me. Why? She wasn't ready to bind us so completely. And yet, to JTI and Jera, she swore her life to protect me. I did know, down the shuddering mate bond, that she regretted it. We both thought we had all the time in the world. When the most dangerous shifter in the West was hunting us, that was our grave mistake. And now my brother was shoving me aside as 5 Sun Mountain Epsilons nearly trampled me as they pursued Gemma and the others. It had been Rian to suggest Helly take a Moonwake name. He was enraptured by her the moment he saw her. There was such a thing as false mates. They were flukes, our souls drawn to another's, but never to truly connect in the destined bond created by the moon goddess. Jan found his mate in a breeder in Cyrus, Morven's harem. What sick and twisted joke was this? I wanted to spit up at the sky, damning the goddess as she spun slowly with her millions of star companions. This wasn't my brother, this savage crazed male wanting to do the wrong things for the right reasons. He was doing all this for love, and it was to a short extent admirable. If his mate could see what lengths he was going to save her, I'd imagine she'd swoon. She likely had the same hope he did, that Cyrus was telling the truth and he would follow through on his end of the deal, release her, and then let them live in peace back in Crescent. How did Rian lose all sense of self within a few days? Was it the poison that changed him or just pure desperation? I didn't know what to do. Gemma wasn't here to stop me from doing anything stupid. Like punch Rian square in the face so hard that he blacked out. "FT Keek," I croaked, guilt threatening to overwhelm me. "FT Rian, I'm so sorry. But I kind of have to." I hauled him inside, propping him against the wall, and shut the door, barring it with a plank of wood. Was this an alpha's duty, leaving one's younger sibling in a dark corner of an abandoned building with a broken nose spurting blood down his unconscious face? It was safe to say that it was not, but for right now, it was the best course of action. Now I had to find my mate and kill anyone in my way. With a last glance at my brother, with shame, I bolted to the room Gemma and Reza had been sharing. I threw the pillows off the beds, finding that damning piece of paper under the fourth one. Tucking it into my waistband, I bolted toward the closet cellar. Please be okay. Please be alive. Please, 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 chanting in my mind as it strained to sense Gemma on the other end of the link. I couldn't lose her, not when I just found her. There were rips in the carpet where wolf claws shredded it. I couldn't risk shifting into my wolf form even if it got me further faster, not when I needed to protect this piece of paper, not when I needed to stay clothed. Running out onto the streets of Napper naked was not ideal for a couple of reasons. The tunnel was quiet as I rushed down the stairs and pushed myself to my limit. The planks were gone, splintered into chunks and slivers. I caught my footing just as I saw a giant cloud of dust foam from skidding tires, and heard Reza screaming from one of Herrick's cars driving away. The mate bond yanked me forward as if tangible, and I obeyed because just ahead a savage fight had broken out between a son, Abselans, and another wolf with black fur. He was losing very quickly. "Hey," I shouted, "the 5 guards," whirled. Suddenly I regretted doing that. And yet I kept going because self-sacrifice required perseverance. It's me you want, right? Bastards, come and get me. They didn't hesitate to pursue, and I hightailed in the opposite direction with no destination in mind, thoroughly screwing myself over. And if that wasn't enough, Reza was right. There was a chance the beast of the West himself traveled all the way from his fortress to one of the cities he destroyed. He did, and he was standing just 100 feet away. 5 guards protecting him as he interrogated an elder female with white hair. "Where are they?" "Yeah," he roared. "Where in fucking hell are those peace-loving cockroaches?" I didn't know what emotions I felt when I saw the male who battered me half to death and tried to assault my mate, but I knew there were a lot, mostly indescribable rage. "Hey, Connor," I barked. He dropped the elder in an instant and rounded on me. It didn't take him long to recognize me, the snarl on his face warping into a sadistic grin bearing long, thick, half-shifted fangs. Kael Liviana, the Lost King. One of the sun guards slammed into me, his jaws clamping down on my shoulder. We hit the ground. He released his hold and rolled. Pain exploded through my body, but my shout of agony was lost to the sun's yelp. Blood that wasn't my own sprayed across my face. Connor's voice boomed, "Anyone else touches him, and you'll meet the same fate." A booted foot kicked me in the ribs. "Get up, you disgrace for an alpha." I coughed up dust. "I'd rather be torn to pieces than follow your order." It wasn't an order. He hauled me up by my front collar with supernatural strength, but your painful death can be arranged. The beast looked far worse for wear since I'd last seen him, features warped with insanity, the pupils of his eyes blown out, chest heaving for breath. I couldn't let that intimidate me. "I'm surprised you're not paralyzed," I said. His grin stretched just a little too wide. "You sound too eager to belittle me knowing I can rip your throat out here and now." "I thought you wanted slow torture." Connor ignored me to Tresk at my gaping wound that looks nasty. "You should find a healer." His smile dropped when he looked back at me, like that traitorous bastard who harbored you and those bitches, like fugitive. Fear speared through me, Dr. Barron. Connor's laugh was just as unhinged as the rest of him. Shame. He was loyal to me for 2 decades. I say his death for my blade was too kind. "You bastard," I hissed, "just another death for me to avenge by killing you myself." Another laugh. His hot breath reeked of blood and rotten meat and flesh, maybe, so confident for someone bleeding out. Again, is that something you Moonwake like to do, sit around until your superiors come and beat you bloody? Your father didn't put up much of a fight when I killed him. It was too easy and too boring, but it was satisfying as hell. I thrashed in his hold and snarled, "Don't talk about my father." Connor bared his teeth in return. "I'll say whatever the hell I want. Here's the plan. We take a little drive back to Hazelstone before these incompetent Sun Mountain get you first." His gaze flicked over my shoulder. I was able to glimpse all 5 Sun Epsilosin in their wolf forms, in a pile whether dead or unconscious. I couldn't say exactly, and wait until my runaway bitches come to find you. Did you ever imagine yourself as bait? It has to be. I spit in his face, right in his eyes. You ramble like an amnesiac elder. Stop talking already. Connor released me with a clawed shove to my shoulder. I hissed in pain and stumbled back right into his waiting Epsilon. They grabbed me to prevent me from escaping, as if I could physically manage that. Connor wiped my saliva off with an exasperated sigh. You're right. I do like the sound of my own voice. His glare met mine, and for the first time I was truly terrified of him here. Let me fix that. He lifted his arm to slash me to shreds. I braced myself to duck at the last moment, my thoughts only of Gemma, but I didn't have to do anything except jump out of the way of a car racing toward us. Connor's guards shouted for their alpha and threw themselves out of the way. I slammed into the ground, yelling in agony when I landed on my shoulder. What? Just in time to see Connor get hit by the front of the car, fly up to shatter the windshield, and collapse from off the roof of his own vehicle. The driver's side window rolled down and Furio leaned out of it. Need a ride? The Hazel Epsilians preoccupied, I hauled myself to my feet, an arm suddenly supported my back. Siri, I gasped, Dr. Barron's daughter. Hello, she greeted breathlessly. I climbed into the back seat, Siri hopped back into the passenger, and Furio slammed on the gas. The Epsilons had dragged Connor out of the way already, but the wheels rolled over the bodies of the Sun Mountain in a series of crunching bone. Furio glanced out the window. That would have been great to run him over, too. Well, still immensely satisfying. He leaned further out. That was for my father. I winced at every movement of Sarah's fingers dabbing on the sweet-smelling salve, wrapping gauze, and yanking it tight. Compared to my injuries sustained at Hazelstone, this was just a nick, but I still had no interest in looking at mutilated flesh. There, said Siri quietly. Her hand rested on my neck and pulled lightly, lay down and rest. I didn't need to be told twice. I laid my head in her lap and closed my eyes, but the last thing I would be able to do was sleep. My hand flew to my waist. I breathed a sigh of relief. The paper was still there. Bryn is alive too, Sari said after the tension slowly started to fade. Murais picked him up from that fight. I tried to lurch up, but she held fast. Is that who was fighting the Sun? She nodded. And who's Murais? One of Connor's concubines while he's gone. They all escaped just hours ago. They found us, as you did. Bryn convinced us to come here to find Miss Reza, but this was after Connor murdered our father. I breathed another sigh, thanked the moon goddess, knowing that those girls survived and escaped that hell was much needed. Good news. I'm sorry about your father, though. And where are they going? Where are we going? Where is my mate going? Yeah, Jim, miss. I knew it. Freya chuckled, called it sis. And I did not disagree. You two guessed that we were mates. Suri patted my cheek. It was fairly obvious. Well, that means Connor knew too, I said, more to myself than the siblings. Do you think ramming into him was enough to kill him? Furio, driving with a completely shattered windshield, said darkly, We can only hope. As much as I wanted to believe it did, I wouldn't hold my breath. Gemma, we're heading for her now, Suri said. We will all meet at the safe house. Karga, Chapter 36. The way he killed my mate, Connor, Elf. My epsilon hauled me to the side of the street before I could be run over by my own goddess-damned car after I was hit with it. I could feel the shards of glass embedded in my skin, peppering my back, my neck, skull, and face. Some bone I didn't know the name of was broken in my arm. The puncture wound in the bubble between my vertebrae made by that bitch Gemma Brooks stabbing me with that damn knife. Where the F cheeky did she even get it? Oh, damn Raisa. She had me fooled. Goddess be damned if I don't rip their pretty throats out. I shoved the fur brains away and got to my feet. I stumbled like I was drunk. I made use of it by snatching one of the epsilon's throats. He choked, but knew better than to fight back. Find them. I spat blood and spit, spattering his face. I don't care if you have to crawl to do it. Alpha. Another guard said they went westward. So I released him with a shove. He shifted into his wolf form and started running after my own goddess, damned car stolen by Baron's whelps. That was concerning in more ways than one. Kargan is a couple of miles in that direction. Alpha. I don't know what that is. I started pulling out shards of glass from my flesh and stormed around the corner where the Liviana came running around. He was being chased by those incompetent son who were now flattened like roadkill. I did not plan on Morven sending his ilk here. I growled before the guard Dalziel, as I recalled, could give his answer. Am I the FG would they risk coming to the cesspool after we made that pact? Lying bastard, he has an heir, doesn't he? Dalziel. Yes, Alpha. I stopped. The street was empty, but for the blood-splattered dust and splintered wood planks. My gaze sliced to what they were, once covering a cellar. I wheezed a laugh and spit the blood pooling in my mouth down the hole, like rats in the rafter. Alpha, you are severely injured. We should find... Dalziel was close enough to grab by the neck and shove him into the cellar. His body hit and rolled down stone, and he shouted and groaned. I laughed. Now you are too. It's empty, my Alpha. There are stairs, he called weakly from within the dark. I descended them, every step I took radiating pain through my body like forks of lightning, and I listened to the patter of glass shards as I yanked and dropped them. My broken arm that would need resetting. My breath rattled, and Dalziel, who I shoved in front of me like a shield, said, Your ribs are likely broken too, Alpha? What are you, a healer? Yes, Alpha. It is why you recruited me. I grunted. We walked until we reached more stairs, which I snarled at but ascended into a closet. Dalziel peered around the door and then waved all clear. I curled my lip at the large amphitheater. I should have burned this place down. Dalziel's eyes flashed in recognition. Alpha, is this where you... Shut up. Go search for the rats. Where are you going, Alpha? We need to find supplies to treat your wound. I'm functioning fine. I'll treat them myself. Dalziel took off. I waited until his footfalls receded to collapse into one of the theater chairs. You're a monster. I whipped around despite the flares of pain shooting through every part of my body. There was no one else in the theater, but the female's voice was crystal clear in my ears. I clenched my jaw and growled, I told you not to call me that. You promised you wouldn't. That was a long time ago, she murmured, close and yet far. I could almost catch her scent, faint beyond the stench of my own blood. Those scars have changed you. I ran my fingers down the ropey tissues, marring my face and neck. Every day, they reminded me of what I'd lost and gained. And whose fault is that? I snapped at her ghost. I sensed her wreath around me like trailing smoke, stirring my hair, an invisible finger stroking up my arm. You blame everyone except yourself, my love. She sighed mournfully. Your pride ruined so much. Pride is what gained me my empire. It is what gained me an army, land, power, and wealth. I jerked to my feet, storming away from her loving touch, shouting to the rafters, war made me thrive. Scars are my trophies of victory. I sacrificed me. You sacrificed me, my love. Her hand cupped my cheek. I leaned into it. Then I growled and knocked her arm aside, stalking away again. But she chased me with her soft plays. You went to war for me, Connor, my beautiful protector. You ravished a country in my name without ever speaking it. How does that honor my death? I gripped the back of a chair and shut my eyes as if she would appear behind me. Yes, I said through gritted teeth, I did it for you. Everything was for you. I avenged your death. You tried to, she corrected gently, touching my hand. And you were still trying. I implore you, my love, to stop. Just stop. Don't kill. Don't intimidate. Do not expand your reign of terror any longer. 12 years is a long time. Don't waste another trying to reach the unattainable. How do you know what's unattainable? I snapped. I fled again. You are dead. You were murdered by our enemy. And now, murdering others. My love will not fix that. It won't make you feel better. I looked at my blood-coated hands. They were trembling, covered in cuts, and I hated them. Making hearts stop beating is my favorite pastime. Her sigh was like a zephyr. Do you think this is what our son would have wanted? Seeing his father bathed in red? Or would he have wanted you dusted with flour as we cooked bread together in the kitchen, or pollen from the flowers in the garden that you picked for me? We are born in blood, I hissed, and we die in blood. I would have taught him to live in blood the same way my father taught me. She was quiet for a moment, and I thought I would finally be granted peace. But then she murmured, then let me go. Connor, release me and continue to live in blood. I want no part of it. I never did. I rounded on her on thin air. You aren't real, but you haunt my every move. Then let go. She yelled back at last, showing her real nature. I love you, and I do not want you to suffer anymore. You called me a monster. You can't love me. I will always love my soulmate. Not even death can break our bond, but it should. Her voice lowered, strained with tears. Let me go, my love, please. Don't make me speechless, I warned her. Don't make me do this. Speechless with fear and love. It's okay, my love, my beautiful beast. Let me go. Let us both be free. I was shaking violently, clenching my teeth so hard. I heard them start to crack. She had been my bodiless companion for the past 13 years. My fated mate from the Western Isles. My voice of reason and insanity. If I let her go, what was left? She was the only thing keeping the real monsters away. But she was a poisoner just like the rest of my thoughts and memories. And if there was one thing I knew about poison, it needed to leave in order to heal what it was trying to destroy. My mate was poisoning me, and I would not be crippled by that. I closed my eyes, feeling wetness dampen my lashes. I felt her fingers brush my cheek. I love you, Connor. My lips formed the words, but no sound was uttered. Alpha. I swung my broken arm, slamming it into Dalziel's head. It knocked him to his knees. His face collided with the back of a seat, and his nose broke instantly. I rolled my eyes. Great fucking fantastic. Dalziel fell onto his side, holding his bleeding nose, but he still managed to say, I found the Leviana print. Eringwan wished for my better nature, kindness, mercy, to stop my conquering and killing. I would let her go, but she was my tether to reason without her. Without that, all that was left was greed. I wanted what I wanted, and I would get it, no matter the cost. It had been all too easy to lay waste to Moonwake's capital, an entire F-truking city named Crescent. How original in a single night. They lived in peace with dozens of surrounding packs for 100 years, so why would they feel the need to shore their defenses or even have a formidable Epsilon army? It was their downfall. My father had amassed Hazel Coast's forces over decades, preparing them in secret, his plan to invade the city devised long before I was born to my mother, who died giving birth to stillborn twins. The day I turned 5 years old, with no one to be his voice of compassion, he went mad. and his ruthlessness stretching over years began to corrupt his tactful scheme. He taught me to hate, to fight without mercy or care, to calculate the enemy no matter their formability, even how to fchiok a female well enough to plant my seed. Heirs were valuable. They continued our bloody legacy. He presented me with my first consort Eridan when I was 20 years old. She ended up being my fated soulmate. Mates were two halves of a whole, and she was as bloodthirsty as I was. And once she learned of my father's takeover to expand from a pack to an empire, she immediately had a hand in it. But she saw his madness, too. And when she suggested killing him while he slept, so I became alpha, I was happy to oblige. When I slashed open his throat, what I wanted was finally mine. The title of absolute power. My father's army was now mine to command. Just a week after my father's death, we prepared to invade. Then Saris Morven appeared at my doorstep, holding my mate's dead body in his arms, her belly carrying our twins split open. Your bitch took things into her own hands. It seems, Herrick, after you sack Moonwake. We go to war. My rage made me forget my father's plans. I invaded Crescent for revenge against innocents, murdering for fun, tasting blood and flesh, while laughing at ceasing heartbeat. Adelia Liviana was not innocent. He tried to suppress Hazel from becoming a force that would harm the moon worshipper. In goodwill, of course, but that was not the way my father viewed it. And neither would I. So I killed him, and his Luna, and his sons and daughters, but for 3 who escaped right under my nose, and a good many other Moonwake shifters. They didn't have an army, they just had escape plan. After losing Aaron, my purpose was to shed blood, drink myself to death, FGK consorts, and destroy the West. It was dangerous, it was difficult, it was fun, and my end goal, play until I was bored, and then kill Cyrus Morven in the same way he killed my mate. I grinned at Dalziel when he led me to Rian Liviana knocked unconscious on the floor of the foyer. F-fucking fantastic. We take him hostage. Then we kill every last one of them. Chapter 37, Mate Gemma. The atmosphere of the car ride was desolate. 2 mates found, and before long, 2 mates lost. An almost mate turned villainous Moonwake was forced to flee once again. I could only imagine their morale plunging further into despair. How many more times, how many more hideouts would they burrow and be chased from until they could return to their homeland? How many more sacrifices were they going to have to make? He's our last hope. Do not let him go. I failed in my promise to Jade Shi. All this was my fault. Do you still feel it? I whispered to Wraith. Yes, she whispered back. I thought it was gone. When we were running down that damn tunnel under Hazelstone, I felt it just disappear. I searched until I thought I would lose my mind. Reza looked over her shoulder at me. I accepted his death. I didn't feel it tug back, but he lived and saved us, and now I feel it. Stronger than ever, because now we have both escaped death. She looked out the window at the infinite nothingness of sand. But if he does not return to me, I will kill him myself. I smiled in spite of myself. There was the Reza I knew take no shit while doing it out of love. It's Hilly. Remember, please don't think less of me. Her fingers were white from holding the steering wheel, so tight, her back ramrod straight, her lower lip quivering. This is my fault. No, I told her fiercely, if there's anyone to blame, it's me. If you want to throw me out of the car right now, I won't blame you. Krysa snorted. Not after all the effort you've gone through to save my ass. Sweet. You are stuck with me until Connor is dead. I'm living with Bryn in our new safe home in Crescent, and you are Kareel's Luna, working beside him to kill Cyrus. How does that sound? I stared at Reza with my mouth gaping like a fish. Healy was looking at her like she was worried for her mental health. But the she-wolf in sheep's wool was now looking ahead with her chin held high, and I had the sense that she would be as immovable as a statue. No one had ever been dependent on me before. much less in life or death situations. So, no pressure. But she was right in alluding to my determination to keep her safe and alive. I wasn't sure what I would do without her. If she exited my life in one way or another, I would never be the same. But it wasn't that which tripped me up, nor was it the Connor dying or killing Cyrus parts. No, it was just the mere mention of the word Luna. Reza, I implored, I met Kael a week ago and only discovered we were maids last night. Not only that, I'm not from the West. Crescent is, I don't know what state it's in. Hopefully not ruins. We're running for our lives. I barely know Kael. His packmates don't trust me. I'm not qualified. Gemma, shut up, Reza and Haley said together. Reza continuing lightly, we will get there when we get there. Sweet. She's right, said Haley, sniffing one last time as she reached resoluteness. Right now we have to focus on finding. I pointed ahead. That Reza leaned forward and breathed. Oh my God. A kingdom of ruins. That was the only thing I could think of to describe what was looming ahead of us, because that's exactly what it was. Like dust and Nedra and Nyberg all combined, rows and rows of adobe and sand and wood buildings in 4 tiers. It was a wonder of architecture and mystery, a study of grim wonder of who would destroy what could have easily been a thriving city. Haley slowed the car to a stop and parked it behind one of the buildings out of the way. None of us moved, as we all wondered. Bryn wanted us to drive all the way out here for abandoned ruin. Then again, that could just be a cover. It must have been destroyed by Connor or Cyrus. Haley breathed. It had to have been a large pack. I don't know any history of this desert. Wraith, she shook her head. Duskfall and Hazelstone are the only places I've ever known. Connor doesn't allow many history books, and Cillian was never inclined to tell legends at our bedside. Haley hummed. I would imagine not. What should we do? Either way, Reza said, we will burn our skin off from the sun, dehydrate, or be stung and die from scorpions or snake. A pause, and then I said, that does not inspire hope. How many times do I have to tell you, I'm not nice, sweet? Reza kicked open her door. We trust Bryn. Those houses offer shelter from the sun, and there might be a well somewhere inside one of them. We see those killers, we run like hell. So, let's go. She got out and started marching. Healy and I exchanged looks. She was just as stunned as I was and decided it was our only course of action. We hopped out and hurried to follow. We wandered warily down street after street, encountering no sign of life, but for a few scorpions and snakes who stayed well away from us. We glanced through window holes and around broken doors, but found no wells. The sun was blistering, and it wasn't long before Reza nearly collapsed. Healy and I caught her before she did, guiding her inside the nearest house. There was nothing within it, no furniture, no animals, not even another room, just an empty, dark, cool square. I sat in its center with Reza's head in my lap. She closed her eyes and rested her hands protectively over her belly. Haley closed the door and started to pace. I felt as hopeless as they did. Why in the goddess's hell would Bryn send us here? There you are. Finally, Reza jolted up my. Suddenly, 6 heads blocked the view of the sun from the window. I recognized them at once, the girls of Connor's harem. Reza cried out when they bustled through the door that Haley opened. I hurried out of the way so they could collide in a group hug, all crying and talking over each other. From what I could see, they all looked unharmed, dressed in appropriate clothing for the heat. Healy looked thoroughly confused, so I joined her and quickly explained. She said softly, a small smile gracing her lips. Good for that. At last the group untangled themselves. Promptly ignoring me and Hilly, they said to Reza, let's get you settled. It's too damn hot up here. The ruins used to be a grand city, destroyed by Cyrus years ago, but like Nebra and Nedra, the underground thrived. I decided I shouldn't be surprised by secret hideouts anymore, but I allowed myself to be shaken to my core by who led them. The white-haired male smiled. the outside corners of his eyes crinkling and smile lines spreading his cheek. Welcome, steadfast she-wolves, to Kargan. My name is Izar Deva, the alpha of the Night Guard pack. Bryn Reza demanded. He came here. The pack leader couldn't have been more than 50 years old, but his white hair wasn't from old age. It was his natural hair, yes, and he said to expect a couple more to arrive, including my cousin Kael Liviana. I demanded answers, but Izar kept kindly refusing, promising he would tell me after we ate and rested. But when I said he is my mate, Izar faltered in his confident stride, and he looked back at me, frowning. Then he broke into a charming, full-bodied smile and laughed deep in his chest. Hakalilin told me only the most stubborn female would be able to put up with his cocky ass. She didn't do that last part, per se, Gemma Brooks. You said? I'm from the East, I said, trying not to snap. Opal Springs, Oceanside. My uncles are the Alpha and Beta. My cousin was sold as a breeder to Connor, but I came in her place. I stabbed him with a knife, escaped with Reza, and saved Kael's cocky ass, came to Nyber. Their hiding place was compromised by Rian. I'm assuming you know who he is. And he and Bryn sacrificed themselves to hold off Hazel and Son, and I'm fucking sick of telling this goddess damn story, so I need you to tell me what you know about my mate. Izar's dark blue eyes were wide with surprise at my outburst, and it took a moment for him to respond. Well, that's a story I'd never thought I would hear. I scowled, but then his eyes flicked up just as I felt the ribbon around my heart give a tug. Good to see you, cousin. It's been a while, hasn't it? If I spun around any faster, I would have passed out. Barely even took him in before I wrapped my limbs around him and kissed him. Kael hummed as he kissed me back, arms squeezing me. Found you. I pulled away and smiled, his face blurry in my teary vision. You found me? Are you not concerned that he is covered in blood? Asked Izar behind me. It's a regular occurrence, I sighed, brushing his hair out of his storm, gray eyes. Are your baths big enough for two? Kael's smirk indeed alluded to a cocky personality, publicly promiscuous. How daring of you, my mate. Mate, I squeaked in happiness. He set me down, and I let go dolefully so he could embrace his cousin goddess. Kael laughed breathlessly. I thought it was only me and Rian left. It'll take a lot more than lunatics like Herrick and Morven to destroy our family, Izar said, patting Kael on the shoulder and then looking in concern at the blood that came off on his hand. But they can still draw blood, I guess. Kael winced. Just don't pat the other one. Why? I began, but it was evident by the blood-stained gauze wrapping it. His shirt was tattered, and of course most of his visible skin. I punched his gut. Stop. Getting half-choking. Hurt. You stupid idiot. Kael grunted in pain and swatted at me. Now, you're hurting me. He protested. I opened my mouth to keep shouting, but Izar coughed pointedly. Young lovers, how about I show you to the bath? Running on bare minimum information. I learned that Kargan had its own source of water, that he had to fill a large tub connected to the adobe wall of one of the rooms of Izar's personal residence. There were a couple of candles, even though there were two large window squares that let in plenty of sunlight. Izar accepted 2 pairs of clothes from another white-haired male. I glanced at the alpha with a question ready, but he shook his head. Not related, he said. I'm glad for your curiosity. Have fun, you two. Cousin. Wait. Izar looked back at Kael, who adopted his dark seriousness when he said, Rian betrayed us to Son. I don't know if he'll search for us, but Connor is coming. It's only a matter of time. I'm sorry. Guilt rode on the back of horror through my veins. Izar looked between us grimly, but before I could apologize too, the alpha held up a hand. There's one thing you missed while we've been apart, Kael, and that's the army we've amassed. Chapter 38, Lost in Passion. Kael. Despite my shoulder still crying out in pain and my extreme aching desire to make love to my mate, I knew Gemma deserved some answer. Left alone, I made her promise to wait until I finished my retelling for demands or questions. I made it as brief as possible for her impatience. It honors her origin. Now that my brother is a traitor, it's no use keeping that name, even though she's a part of Moonwake. Gemma placed her forefinger to my lips, silencing me. My patience is limited when you ramble my mate, but I am glad you're safe now, and those two are alive. She rested, her palms on my chest, pausing for a moment before asking, "Are you done yet?" Knowing I was going to regret saying yes, I said yes. She punched me in the gut again. "You fought with Connor." Almost is key, my lovely mate," I protested, dodging her next punch. Virio ran him over. "So he could still be alive, and he could come after us." Gemma's shouting was less angry and more upset, so I pulled her against me and tucked her hair behind her ear to calm her down. She immediately went limp. "Hey," I said softly, "for right now, let's focus on the good things, like how we can finally have sex in a bathtub or how I saved this." I held up her now crinkled paper. She gasped, looking between it and me as if she couldn't decide if it was real, and then took it with trembling fingers. I thought it was lost under my pillow. I kissed her forehead. "I could never let you lose something important to you, Gemma." Gemma chewed her lip. "Thank you. When are you going to open it?" She smoothed it out but didn't unfold it. "I'm still afraid to then." She thrust it at me. "You should." Okay, I said hesitantly now. She set it on the table next to our fresh pile of clothes. "No, I guess not. I like the idea of sex better." I forced myself not to sound too eager, shall we? I scanned her from head to toe, becoming more mystified with every detail I took in. I didn't want a mate for the fear of putting her in constant danger for simply being associated with my name. Even if she was strong enough to handle it, it wouldn't lessen my guilt or worry. I never imagined having one in the first place. There was no time limit for a shifter to find their other half. But when I turned 27 years old, my hope grew bleak for the chance of finding her in a city of ruin in the middle of a desert, also in the midst of war. And yet, here is Gemma Brooks. A she-wolf born from a sea of endless blue water. She found me, a wolf born under the full moon, watching over a sea of endless dry sand. Two halves of a whole, two seas needing the other desperately. At this moment, I wanted three things. 1, tell her I love her. 2, mark her, claiming her as mine and only mine forever. 3, take her to my homeland in Crescent, where she could be my Luna, where we could bring peace back to the West. But that was getting too far ahead. Start small, like making her scream my name while I made her climax. "Kael," I started when Gemma's hands gently held my face. Her brows were creased in worry, the tiny crevices sprinkled with dust, sticking to beads of sweat. Her eyes were worried too, her eyes, the blue of her irises reminding me of the painted walls in the moon, goddess's temple, all sorts of mingling blues depicting the cycle of the skies from dusk to dawn, hers being the beautiful midday sky, the warmest, most powerful time of day. I would do anything to help her be as powerful as the sun in the sky. Or at least just make her happy instead of fretting over me. I gave her a smile, knowing the key to making her happy was a genuine smile, not my hiding, my fear of the present, past, and future swaggering grin that coaxed a great amount of annoyance from her lithe body. A body I really wanted to see naked. I figured she wanted to see mine because I saw her peaked breasts through the sweat, damp white shirt she wore. My gaze lingered on that just a moment too long. Gemma huffed and dropped her hands, pushing past me to sit on the edge of the tub and dip her hand in it. She made a noise that suggested the water wasn't perfect, but it would do. I turned, surprised and delighted to see her facing me with her legs completely spread. If you want to see my tits so bad, she lifted her arms, then you might as well actually see them. Her voice turned sultry, which made my heart start to pound. You can even kiss them, or lick them, or even pull them a little. Cheek, yes, I rasped, throwing myself onto my knees despite the teeth, clenching pain from jarring my shoulder. I warred between the pace we both wanted to set, but it was my injury's decision. Slow, I grunted, taking her shirt hem and peeling it off over her head and letting it drop at her feet. Gemma took my hands in hers and brought my knuckles to her lips. You're in pain, Kael. I don't want— Yes, you do. She rolled her eyes. Of course I do. I want you so bad it hurts, but my hurt comes from between my thighs, not a bite wound. Gemma paused, hesitating to ask her next question. Dare I ask to see it? I stroked her chin with my forefinger. Be gentle. She found the end of the gauze strip, keeping my gaze locked on her face. She carefully unwound it to eventually reveal the gruesomely shredded flesh that Siri Sweet, chaste Siri, had sworn loudly at. Gemma swore, too, but in a mournful whisper. Scars are badges of honor, I told her, my voice just as low. They're beautiful and brave. Her eyes met mine. Scars, Kael, not open wounds. Semantic. Gemma scowled, minimal snark, remember. Dread at bay. Remember. She silenced me with her lips to mine, soft and lingering, and I could almost taste her deliberation. We should make love before the water gets too cold. I caught her lower lip between my teeth and mumbled. You just can't resist me, can you? She stilled, but her eyes flicked down. Your cheek says you can't resist me either. Indeed, I was already hard. I released her lip to capture her nipple, kissing, licking, pulling a little, just as suggested. Gemma's hand moved to the back of my head, fingers scraping my scalp, holding me where I was as she sighed my name in pleasure. When she lifted and bent her legs at her knees, I leaned back to pull her pants off. Luckily, the object of my desire was already level with my face, but Gemma denied me immediately and dipped into the tub with only a small disturbance of the water. I kept forgetting about my shoulder. I grunted in pain yet again, but shed my shirt, what was left of it anyway, and pants, making Gemma purr with satisfaction at my length that sprang free. Even if she still winced in worry, leaving room in the tub for me to slip into so I could settle against the one end and stretch out my legs, accommodating Gemma between them. The water was lukewarm on the edge of becoming chilled, but it had its benefits, making Gemma's tits more peaked. And I felt the need to press my face between her breasts for warmth, and I felt my lower muscles clench, forcing myself to not lift my hips until she was ready. In spite of her uncertainty, Gemma was more than eager. With my hands braced on the edges of the tub, I wanted to grab her ass, but my shoulder disagreed, and she leaned down to kiss me. She dragged herself slowly up my length, bringing herself forward until our pelvic bones knocked together. It was so tantalizing that I croaked a curse. She quirked a smile that I didn't think she was capable of dangerous lust, like she knew exactly what she was doing and would enjoy tormenting me with her skills. I knew she would continue to surprise me, and I was fully willing to be at her mercy. And when she grabbed me, I shouted the same curse. Gemma's smile widened, and I knew she was some kind of devil in disguise. I wanted to tip my head back, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from her face. We started to jostle the water with little waves as we rocked slowly together. I made Pain take the back seat to smack Gemma's backside and grip it, steadying her so I could enter her. Our groans of pleasure and pain mingled together like our limbs. Gemma's hands bracing the edge of the tub on either side of my head. Her head was bent so I could only see its crown, her hair spilling forward, just barely touching the surface of the water. I pulled her closer, plunging deeper within her body until I could press my face between her breasts and absorb her warmth. Kael, she whimpered, her forehead resting on mine as she worked her hips up and down, desperation steadily rising, barely giving me a chance to move my own. I started to grace her sternum with kisses until my lips were dappled with sand. I drew back and wiped it away quickly. Then I grabbed her waist, arresting her movements. A growl started to rumble in her throat, but it died when I said, "You're quite sandy." "My Gem." "I am." We both looked down at the granules floating and stirring in the water. Then we got distracted by the blurry sight of me just about to pull out, and Gemma hummed a laugh. "This is a new experience." "A good one?" "Excellent," she hummed, leaning in to kiss me, and I want to keep going. I was still holding her suspended in motion and purred, "Patience." She will. Gemma met my eyes, and in hers, the lust darkened. "Do it." I was happy to oblige. I yanked her toward me, and I plunged inside. She screamed and almost collapsed on top of me. Even lost in passion, she was conscious of the state of my body, catching herself before she could even get close to my shoulder. She surrendered control of her body to me, and I pushed and pulled her, finally working my hips to thrust myself in and out. And now the water was sloshing out of the tub and splashing onto the floor. We climaxed at the same time, our outcries surely echoing out onto the empty city streets. Chapter 39, Royalty is Overrated. Kael. So Gemma said lightly as she wrapped clean gauze around my shoulder, "You're a cousin." More truths she deserved. My mother's cousin, so technically he is my second cousin. Really, I had no idea they escaped the raid, much less survived. It was a grim statement, one that I believed to be true for the last 12 years. I even forgot that he was the alpha. My mother's side of the family is or was, I'm not sure, pretty large, the diva family of the Night Guard pack. "You're double royalty," Gemma mused, giving the gauze a final tug. I flinched. "Oh, sorry." Here she bent to gently press a kiss to my lips. After coming down from a high of completion, we actually bathed, scrubbing away all the sand and blood that we could manage, full well knowing that it wouldn't be long before the grains would find their way back sooner or later, which was one of the hazards of fleeing from enemies in a desert. Now we were in the bedroom that Raisa led us to. She said that no one else wanted to fetch us after hearing our, as she really put it, happy screams. Gemma had flushed deep red and smacked me in the chest when I snickered smugly. I leaned against the rough headboard of the bed for two, both of us, unfortunately, fully dressed as Gemma tended to my battered body. Outside evening was falling, and while I was still dazed with desire for my mate, I couldn't fend off my anxiety over the status of my pack. I had been forced away from them for days when Connor abducted me, and now I was gone again. Did they think I was dead? Were they going to risk everything to search for me? I had to get back to them as soon as possible. But there were just a few kinks in that plan. A few as in a lot. I couldn't let Gemma see my panic. I shook my head and laughed. Royalty is overrated, if you ask me. Well, it can get you a lot of places or gain you followers. We should go talk to Isaac. Gemma started to slide off the bed, but I caught her waist and hauled her back, settling her back against my chest and resting my hands in her lap. I didn't let them wander yet, but I did bury my face in her shoulder and kiss her with the intent to leave a love mark, not the true one I wanted to leave, but it would have to do for now. My male fated mate desire to truly mark her was as strong as my want to choke her again. The way you screamed my name, I murmured against her warm sand-free skin. It made me feel invincible. She leaned into my touch and hummed. I plan on doing it often. I snarled in satisfaction, making her laugh with that dark knowledge of her capabilities. Don't make me take you right here, I warned. Don't make me agree, she purred, snapping the waistband of my pants. I had to force myself not to slip my hands under hers and slide my fingers inside of her. Then I reeled back on my own thoughts. Gotta smite me. Why was I so horny? Think with your upstairs brain.
Kael.
You heard what Reza said. I told her, struggling to focus when my mate was driving me mad just by existing. Azar instructed everyone to get rest. Tomorrow is going to be something. I sighed in exasperation. Gemma nodded. I sensed her mood dampening. Do you really think he has an army big enough to defeat Connor? Successfully leaving a love mark, I slouched, now holding Gemma like my last lifeline, hoping to fall asleep with her in my arms. Safe. Not big, I'm not sure, but it would be convenient if it was. I just want to know why he never reached out over the past 12 years. Why would he not even try to find us? Jera and Jake's father and Izar were good friends. If not to connect with me, at least to the siblings he claimed were his niece and nephew. I just have a lot of questions that I need answers to. Gemma rested her hands over mine. I hope you get them, but they're right. We need to recover as much strength as we can. Are you sure you don't want any more pain relievers? We were lucky enough to have not one but 3 healers in our company. I knew without knowing that Helly would chat up Siri and Furio until she squeezed every bit of knowledge they had out of them. Not only that, but apparently Izar had a few, none that I heard or saw, but they gifted me a salve for my shoulder that Gemma had already applied. I shook my head. Pain relievers, their fancy word for the numbing effects of alcohol. You're right, sighed Gemma, though. I could use some of it. It's prickly. Never mind. I kissed her temple. Let's sleep. My mate was a heavy sleeper. After only a few minutes, she drifted into dreams, while I was left to stare at the dark ceiling with my shoulder aching and smarting. I had no idea how Gemma was able to just set aside her own list of worries as mine chased me relentlessly. I turned my head to the side. A slice of moonlight almost perfectly highlighted the side table with Gemma's secret paper folded on top. She wanted me to read it. Truth be told, I didn't want to experiencing the same fear. Just how awful was the trade? I sighed. What was one more depressing thing to dwell on? Carefully setting Gemma aside, I swung my legs over the edge of the bed and leaned forward to pick it up. I used that sliver of light to unfold it at last. It was near falling apart, but at least the writing was intact. I mentally prepared myself.
The first line was addressed to Havelock Brooks, Gemma's uncle, Oceantide's beta.
My gaze skipped to the last line, which was signed Connor Herrick. So this was the beast's handwriting. I curled my lip at the text between those lines. I will make this last correspondence brief, as it is a summary of our exchange, because the second row said. I almost breathed a sigh of relief and thanked the moon goddess. How convenient. In order to lend my forces, you offer me your greatest treasure as a gesture of absolute trust. No relief there. I quickly put the pieces together. Havlo cheated his daughter because she was, apparently, who he loved most. In exchange for Connor's epithelium, a female would count. My heart stopped. When your chosen treasure arrives, I will send my Epsilons to grow your own forces. I'm sure their skills will be well utilized by you, and within the year, you will have a grand pup. With shaking fingers, I folded the paper and threw it on the table. It wasn't a horribly shocking deal, unfortunately, just sickening. It begged the questions. Who knew what, and what was Connor going to do if he did know? Gemma wasn't who he'd been promised. I looked at Gemma and chewed my cheek. Should I tell her, or should she learn of her own accord? I must have fallen asleep, because the next thing I knew, Gemma was waking me. Get up, sleepy wolf. There's another secret city to explore. I sat up and crushed her in a sudden hug, kissing her fiercely. She squeaked in surprise, goddess. I loved when she did that before, melting into it. I pulled away. Can I say it yet? Gemma scowled, half in exasperation, half in hesitation. Not until I know we won't be separated. No, Market. She shook her head once, and that was all the explanation I would get. I wasn't much taken with ruins, but the underground tunnels were pretty exceptional. I doubted Izar's supposed army was hidden in them. Before he led us there, we met with him in a large room, empty but for a low table that our new company sat around me, Gemma, Healy, Reza, and Bryn, Siri, and Furio, along with 6 young females, now free from Connor's harem. It was worrisome that 2 of them were pregnant, though Kargan apparently had its cool spots and sufficient dietary needs. Keeping them here was not ideal. Izar wanted us well rested for this very moment, deciding each of our future. Reza and Bren were already seated, and Bren, having escaped death and Sun's attack mostly unscathed, rested his hand on her belly, their foreheads together, lost in their own world. I resolved to do everything in my power to prevent anything or anyone from trying to tear them apart. I sat beside him while Gemma took a place beside Reza. I'm sorry, I told them both. Bryn patted my uninjured shoulder. All's forgiven. Alpha Kael sacrifice takes its toll, but sometimes it's for the better. I met Reza's gaze, and I learned that it would always be either sharp and scathing or fierce with compassion. This time, there was a soft warmth in the pale green depths. She dipped her head. I forgive you, Kael. Thank you for everything you have saved me and my friends from. I heard Gemma's heart leap at Reza's use of friend directed at her. This is so wonderful. Is it? Hiller interrupted, not unkindly, in this little bubble, maybe with mates reunited, pups on the way, freed slaves, my alpha alive, and mostly, well, yes, it's a recipe for a hopeful future. But until we get there, there is a lot of loss to address. Every single one of us is a victim and target of Connor Herrick. We're not safe. So what do we do? She was more than right about everything, especially the part where all 13 of us were wanted dead or recaptured by the Beast of the West. Let's list each reason, Izar said, making most of us jump when he appeared in the doorway before taking a seat at the head of the table. In exchange, I'll answer your question, Miss Healy. Well, Healy said, I suppose I don't have a specific reason. I just helped Gemma and Reza escape. So I bet the bastard would call that aiding and abetting. I was his favorite consort, Reza said. I betrayed his trust and was the first to escape his prison, along with these 2 newly mated. Gemma shrank, but I wouldn't be ashamed of making my mate happy. The least I could do was answer next. I am the alpha of the pack. He tried to destroy. He wants to hunt my family down as a conquest to finish off the last remnants of Moonwake. I also cursed him out, irritated him verbally, spit in his face, stole his car, helped Reza and Gemma escape from right under his nose, and let him get hit by a vehicle, his own vehicle. Beat of silence was met with surprise, and all were impressed. Despite almost everyone knowing all of that already, hearing it listed as accomplishments strangely put things in perspective. He tried to kill me and my brother for saving most of you, Sari began. We escaped, continued Furio, and hit him with his own car. I hope we broke several bones. He stole us, one of the consorts, Maria said, on behalf of the other 5. We let him fuck us. But now we are free. We're free? Another breathed on the verge of tears. I betrayed him and escaped too, Bryn said. Everyone looked at Gemma, who stiffened at the attention, but when Reza gave her hand a squeeze, she said what everyone already knew. I stabbed him in the spine with a knife, and I'm the reason why we are all fleeing for our lives. Subjectively, it was true. Objectively, Healy believed otherwise. She jerked to her feet and pointed accusingly at Gemma. You're the reason we're all here. All right, she announced, because what Blee told you is true. You started a revolution. Chapter 40, meant to be here. Gemma. Making love to Kael was better than I hoped it would be. much better than it would have been if we tried it down in Dedra. While I was tipsy, I felt empowered by my desire for him to get the release and pleasure I wanted, but I wanted to make him happy most of all. I wanted to distract him from his pain and fear and worry about his family and his encounter with Connor. Evie was his crown, but I told him I wouldn't let it fall on my feet. I would keep it from falling at all, and if it did, I would catch it and bear its weight too. I fell asleep quickly in his arms, surprised and secretly overjoyed that I slept straight through the night, and when I woke, he was in a fitful sleep. His brows were knitted in pain, eyelids moving rapidly back and forth as his eyes tried to follow the madness of a nightmare, his body trembling as it overheated despite the still, cool morning, fighting to remain calm for both our sakes. I woke him, and I was able to breathe a sigh of relief when he kissed me. And in that, I knew he would be able to make it through another day. Now we were sharing reasons why the most lethal wolf in the world wanted to kill each of us, and somehow it felt like a bonding experience, like we were the only ones who could understand the weight of Connor's ruthlessness. Then Haley, brave, sweet, impetuous, upset, and angry, Haley jerked to her feet and pointed at me with a finger that felt like an arrow to that heart. "You're the reason we're all here. All right," she announced, "because what Bly told you is true. You started a revolution." What I blurted, incredulously staring just as wide-eyed as everyone else, including Kael. "No." Not only that, she interrupted, holding up a silencing hand, her voice evolving into something I could only describe as meaningful. "You put us all at risk, having to endure near-death experiences more than once." "Where is this going?" Kael asked sharply in my defense. "Hush, Alpha. What I mean to say is, Gemma, look at us. We're still alive because of you." My throat tight, I met the gaze of all 12 wolves that I doomed and saved. Apparently, I found sadness, regrets, hints of doubt, shadows of resentment, and encouragement. Kael and Reza, most of all, looked at me with joy and, dare I say it, love. "Because of you, Gemma Brooks," continued Hilly, "we were freed of prisons, abusers, and fake lovers. You saved the futures of 3 growing pups. You reunited Reza and Bryn and saved Kael Moonwake's last hope. You found your other half in him, making him and yourself immeasurably happy, which you both more than deserve. And maybe biggest of all, you proved to more than just us that Connor Herrick isn't invincible. He can be hurt. We've weakened him. Great job, Virio." I like the mental image of the beast picking glass shards out of his ass. Virio dipped his head with a sideways smirk. "My pleasure, Gemma." I looked at him. "Even though I lost my father, I agree with Miss Hilly, and even if you never meant to do any of that, I personally can say thank you. I'm sorry we were mean to you." When I looked at Mari's, her eyes were glossy with tears. "After you escaped, we had no hope. We were terrified that Connor would take out his anger on us. But he didn't, and when he left, Bryn saved us and brought us here, but it was still you who gave us that chance." "See all the lives you've touched," Healy said softly, still standing. Reza spoke next. "I think you should be proud. Even if you were never meant to be here, I think you were meant to be here. If I could, I would have broken down and sobbed right then and there." Healy was painting me as some sort of hero savior, and if I was supposed to believe or even be so, then being a crying mess wasn't very inspiring. So I swallowed and lifted my chin, meeting each gaze one more time, all of them on the verge of tears, now before dipping my head in respect. A gesture that could barely do justice to the swelling of emotion in my chest. "Thank you," I rasped. I cleared my throat. "Thank you, all of you. Reza is right. I never meant for any of this to happen. I wasn't meant to be here at all. Despite all the near-death experiences between me and all of you, I'm almost glad." The words started pouring out of me, out of my heart and soul. I was just some girl who failed epsilon training and did nothing all day in a tiny plain village that never knew war, while all of you scraped by or did whatever you had to do to survive. Even if it meant tearing your will into pieces, I came in the selfish pursuit of an adventurous new life, to say the least. I was more wrong than the moon goddess herself could have predicted. Crisis is right, I said again with a sigh. I was meant to be here. I went from being excited to being kidnapped to almost being assaulted to knifing the beast of the West to escaping to the hideout of a lost pack. I wanted to go home so badly, it hurt, but I didn't realize it until very recently. However, after meeting each of you one by one, seeing and experiencing your suffering every day, I realized just how much I want to stay. I leaned forward to meet Carol's eyes, which were alight with pride, but there was no mistaking the sorrow and anger too. Then I gritted my teeth and said, and I realized how much Connor deserves to die. If no one had experienced devastation thanks to his actions, I assumed there would be surprise or protest. But every wolf agreed with a darkening of their gazes. In that regard, Azar announced, all of us jumping again, having forgotten he was even here. I have good news. I'll dumb it down, for lack of time's sake. What the Night Guard's alpha listed next wasn't so much good news as grimly hopeful news. It presented a future we all wanted, peaceful and safe, where we'd be able to live with our families, however big or small, but the road to get there would be marred with blood and death. If we hope to ever reach victory. Clearly, Kael, Jakshi, and Jara have been withholding the truth from you. Well, not that part, Kael barked. What? Izar's deep voice was as serious as his dark eyes. There are more Moonwake shifters that escaped that night 12 years ago. My immediate family included, some live here, but most of our pack have migrated to the Southland. Patil's voice rose in anger and disbelief. The Southland. I quickly moved to sit on my knees behind him and wrap my arms around his neck to calm him, resting my cheek on his shoulder. Yes, as our sigh was regretful and weary, as if he hated bearing this news to his own family. With Herrick and Morven's forces constantly patrolling every city, village, and den every damn week, they had to retreat further and further every month after too many close calls. Without them knowing, they chased our people all the way to the southern border of the West. Over the years, our people made connections, bonding, or even merging with other stragglers or orphans left homeless by the Alpha's reign of destruction. They crossed out of West and into the Southlands, where they were gratefully absorbed into its nearest, largest pack, Dawncrest, and remained safe and undetectable, and still do. Izar looked at each wolf, and that simple gesture reminded everyone that they were the stragglers and the homeless, the packless, but it also seemed like an invitation. The South was safe and far, far away from Connor and Morven. I saw recognition spark in several pairs of eyes. Not only that, continued Izar, resting back on Kael, we have amassed a force to stand against at least one alpha. Our new company stirred with shock, and I could see them struggling not to get too excited at the prospects that could bring defeating Connor would attain a freedom none of them had ever known. I held Kael tighter, willing him to grasp at the hope Izar was holding out, but his mind was preoccupied more than it had been last night during his nightmare. The crown's weight grew heavier. I'm sorry, cousin, Izar sighed. I don't know why Jara and Jeji would still be withholding this from you. He paused and then said with a more authoritative tone, correspondence has been shit. Catch me up on things on your end. Whatever your situation is, the end goal remains the same. We rescue whoever's left in Nagra, bring them here or to the south if they so desire. And then we move in on Hazelstall. Kael lifted his head, startling me, but he ignored it to say flatly, the end goal is to return to Crescent. Izar observed his younger cousin with the experience of dealing with unruly wolves, Kael didn't seem to care about the consequences of talking back to an elder. Yes, Izar said slowly. That comes after eliminating Hazel's forces. We plan on using any means to wipe it clean. I was startled again. I wasn't quite sure how big the scale of this all was that Izar alluded to. But those two sentences, he meant to completely eradicate every last wolf in the Hazel Coast pack.
Hold on, Reza said, breaking the stunned silence. You plan to murder everyone, even the innocent females and pups. Connor has more consorts and dozens of pups at another residence. Do you plan to burn everything to the ground as well?
Izar observed her critically too, but with an edge of respect. I'll be happy to share details at a later time. For now, I'll keep it simple. We kill Herrick and Cade. His Epsilon will fall apart into chaos. If his own packmates are loyal beyond death, they will engage our army. If they are victims, they will use this chance to flee. Our soldiers will recognize that and act accordingly, meaning they will do whatever it takes to either fight that threat or make sure those that flee escape to freedom. Trust me, we have thought of just about everything. Just about, noted Risa sharply. If we intended to win this, Will being someone you will explain further. And this referring to a third party about to engage Connor, who has defeated countless packs, no matter how large their army. Then you need to nix any seed of doubt that could possibly exist. And she gestured to our company who have lived directly under his shadow, will make sure there is no just about. Reza learned toward Izar, and I was in awe of the grace and poise that she sharpened into strength and defiance. If she was the head of whatever Izar's army was, then I would gladly follow her into battle. So I hope, Izar, Diva, that we can lend our knowledge to your operation. My awe was shared by the rest of the company, including Izar. He blinked, speechless, but only for a moment. Then he broke out into a grin. We should make you a beta. It was a high compliment, but Reza sat back against her mate and said, I would rather be an alpha. This part has ended. Thank you for listening. If you would like to continue listening to the next part, please let me know by leaving a comment